as you know, class, we're starting early because in Pakistan it's it's 11 o'clock at night. So it gave us gave our guest an hour instead of being midnight. She gained an hour. This is Dr. Amina Mozam, and I hope I'm saying your name correctly. She's an expert in psychometric educationist and social sciences with a lot of research concerning the physical and mental health of women and adolescents. Uh, she uh, graduated from Lahore College for Women University in Pakistan, and she is a tenured associate professor at the Lahore College for Women there. And this is one of the largest women universities in Asia. And she supervised this training for faculty and students in collaboration with the British Council. And it's she has developed a research collaboration with her between her university and Lakehead University in Canada, and that's where Dr. Chan, who is listening in, is going to be speaking next, and she's at Lakehead. So we have a collaboration between Pakistan and Canada, and and she's. Oh, I don't want to. I could go on, and I don't want to do too much.
Where's Dr. Macy?
Huh? Well, it's not. I mean, there's many publications. We Our speaker is a real scholar as well as a clinical psychologist, and she's written 2 books and published a lot. And so she's on the board of the International Council of Psychologists, and represents that, and she's actively involved in community projects. And just I know June will be introducing Dr. Chan next, but I think I'll mention it now. Dr. Chan is my daughter-in-law. So although I'm not doing research with the two of them, I have a connection also. All right. Well, thank you, Amina, for being willing to do it at this hour. And I guess you can go ahead and talk about the women in Pakistan, the issues that they face, and the status of women's education in Pakistan. So I turn it over to you now.
Thank you so much, Dr. Florence. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so thankful to Dr. Florence for providing me this opportunity to talk to her doctoral students. I find this very exciting to share that the kind of challenges women are facing in Pakistan and how they are comparing and what are their struggle stories. Before we begin, let me share this with you that Dr. Florence has been very supportive to educational activities in Pakistan. She has basically reviewed many PhD dissertations, and her valuable suggestions help students to improve their work. This is something really great which she has done, and it's a great contribution indeed towards the educational sector of Pakistan. So thank you, Dr. Florence, for that. Um, let me talk about today's presentation or informal talk and something whatever you can count in. But there are various aspects we can talk about women in Pakistan. But today I chose to talk about the status of women education in Pakistan particularly, and then we will be looking what kind of the barriers the females are facing during this journey of education. So basically, the first picture, which you can see that they are little girls, they are belonging to the class 3, 4, or maybe 5. They are just sitting on the floor. They have books in front of them. They don't have any chairs and tables, and this is one of a real-time picture. So you can imagine that at a very large scale where the government schooling is being involved, the structure of education is very poor. We will talk about it further. These are few of my beautiful students who are the part of my MS class. They have been, they took education from a private sector school, and you can see the difference in their smiles, the difference in their confidence level, their get up, and you can clearly see that there is a difference between two pictures which speaks about how the girls in educational sector looks like and how the girls in private sector look like. So we will talk about the different educational systems being provided in Pakistan too. So it's not like that that Constitution of Pakistan does not talk about that education should be accessible to everyone. The Article 25A states that the state shall provide free and compulsory education to all children, regardless of gender, the age of 5 to 16 years, in such a manner as may be determined by law. So you see that Constitution says that education should be provided to everyone, but what we see is not actually the true picture of that Constitution. This is just a one slide which shows that education is being set up at primary, secondary, and tertiary levels, and what are the school and levels of education, which is quite common in more or less in all the countries. So there is no need to go into that detail, but the structure is there. What I meant to say is that there is a proper structure being provided. We're looking at the literacy rate in Pakistan. I will be quoting some information and some data from one of a leading newspaper of Pakistan, that is an English newspaper, and it is called Dawn. Um, there was a huge research which they conducted in 2015, and I'm using data from that. Pakistan came into being in 1947, and this research is providing the data from 1951 till 2015. And what you can clearly see that for if you see it gender wise, because the key is supporting education for all the women and for men, you can see that the literacy rate has been increased for men gradually, but not for women that much, right? So there is a clear-cut gender disparity which can be seen in terms of literacy rate being provided. In relative terms, most out of the school children are in Balochistan. Pakistan has provinces like the major provinces are called Punjab, Balochistan, Sindh, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, and Gilgit-Baltistan. So what you can see that Balochistan has 66% children who are out of school. So it's a huge number, and it is the less privileged province of Pakistan, where not only in terms of education but in terms of all kind of resources, this province has always been marginalized. More than half of the country out of the school children live in Punjab. Now here I would like to share with you that Punjab is considered to be the most well-off province of a country, where most of the resources are being provided, where probably the condition as compared to socio-economic condition as compared to the other provinces is much better, but it's overpopulated as compared to the population of other provinces of Pakistan. We find that Punjab is more populated, and half of the school children who live in Punjab are still out of school. So it's a big number. When we look at the statistics out of school children according to gender and region, we again find out that in all of the provinces, and even in the Islamabad, which is the central capital of Pakistan, we find that generally the girls are more out of school as compared to the boys. So in a gross percentage, you can say that 55% girls are out of school, whereas 45% boys are out of school. Now I will look that what are the reason being provided for the students to be being out of the school. You will find very interesting comparison when we look for the reasons that why girls are out of school and why boys are out of school. So you see that for the girls, 34% girls are out of school because parents do not allow them to go to school. Whereas when you look at the boys, the percentage is high, that is 38% because child is not willing. So you see, whereas the child is not willing is a second most important reason for girls being out of school, which is 20%. So then education is expensive, then school is too far because it is at a very long distance and there are no transportation modes to reach for them. And then girls had to work at home, 10% stay at home because they have to do their household work. Too young and too old to attend the school is 8%, and those who are handicapped are 3% and had to help with work either in agricultural land or at home is 3%. So similarly you can see that the percentages and the reasons for boys are different, and their percentages varies as compared to the girls. So you can clearly see that girls face more hard time as compared to boys in terms of the reasons being provided for them to be out of school. So when we look at what age most of the students are out of school, we see a very interesting demography. Like you see that at the beginning, at the age 5, there are 31% who are out of school, and at the age of 16, you see 55% of out of the school. And you can see that it's a curve-like thing where you find that most of the students are being dropped at age 8, and this is basically the age where the primary schooling has been completed. And at that time, after primary, when the parents get that idea that yes, they can just read and write, they can write their name, they can do signatures, so they just take them out of the school. And when we talk about the literacy rate of Pakistan, those students who have just education up to primary are being considered as literate individual, right? Okay, so there is another interesting debate that around 70% of the children who are out of school has never been to school, whereas the 30% are those who are being dropouts from school. And when we look at two different provinces, we will find out that there are uh, a lot of students, the high percentages of those who have never been to school, they have never seen the school, and there are the less percentages of them who are being dropped out. So it clearly says that the basic education, the access to education has not been provided to everyone. Then children who belong to the poor families far more likely to be out of school. Looking at the socio-economic status, we find that if we look at those families who are not earning much, by the way, let me share with you to relate it better that the average income of Pakistani individual is $1.25 per day, right? So we see that the poorest, the 57% of the families who are considered to be poorest, who are not even earning $1.25 per day, the 57% of the children are out of school. And when we look at the poor, the comparatively better than the lowest one, 37%, and then the middle income group is 26%, and upper middle is 16%. And even for the rich people, you would be surprised enough to know that their money is not the problem, but what the problem is their mindset. Fine. So they may be the landlords, they may be very rich people, but still they don't have any understanding that how much education is important, and 10% is a huge number for those who can afford education, yet they don't go for that. education system is unable to retain the enrolled student is another big issue. And what are those issues? We will be talking about then one after another. But let me tell you grossly about that, that Pakistan is observing multiple educational system. For instance, we have a huge private educational system which is very much established and where education is very very costly, but it's worth it, right? When we talk about the public sector education at primary and secondary level, the standard of education is not that high. The facilities provided to students are not that good. So many of the people who can afford little bit, and they belong to even middle class or upper middle class, they tend to go for private education system rather than the government education system, because at most of the time in government schools there are not even the proper chair and desk available, the teachers are not available, the building is not properly appropriate enough to have classrooms. And we will have some pictures ahead which I will show that there are uh, you know type of classrooms which you may not even imagine of. They are the schools where classes are being held under the tree, right? So in that situation, of course, you cannot find out some good percentage of literacy. So talking about the problems related to women education in Pakistan, first of all, I would like you to have a look on this picture. Here you can see that some kids are sitting on, on the floor on some rocks, and a boy is, writing on on a drum, using it as a blackboard. This is a real picture. This is not, fake enough. But there are many places where the doors are being used as blackboards, where the drums are being used as blackboards. So these are the conditions of the government schools, especially at the primary levels and in rural areas. This is very much common, and even in some big cities, we found such schools where there are no proper facilities for the education. So according to the Pakistan economy survey 2017 to 2018, the literacy rate of entire Pakistan, the national net enrollment for overall Pakistan stood at 58, in which Punjab, which is one of its largest populated province, is on 54th percent, and similarly the KPK is with 53%. When we talk about Sindh, we find that there is a huge disparity between female and male literacy, where we find that very few number of females are being access to education. This is one of the picture of a real classroom, where you can see that the condition is not at all appropriate to get any kind of education, right? Female literacy in Balochistan is one of the lowest in the whole world. Most girls are not allowed to acquire education, and its literacy rate overall is 37%, which is much below that of the three other provinces of Pakistan. And in Balochistan, the literacy rate of women was estimated to be 20, with only 10% women in rural areas are acquiring education. Because Balochistan is famous for its very strong custom, its rituals, and its patriarchal system, where females are not allowed to go outside without covering their bodies and things like that. So the education is very very low in Balochistan. Okay, so according to a survey conducted by FATA Secretariat and the Bureau of Statistics, only 7.8% of the adult women in the region were literate, compared to the 45% of the men. So you see that at least 45% children in FATA have never been enrolled to schools. Uh, when we look at the in northern areas of Pakistan, interestingly, the literacy rate seems to be increasing at a relatively faster pace, where gender ratio is roughly equal between men and women, and number of the boys attending primary school is higher by over 8,000 compared to the number of girls, which is not that much big. Similarly, in Azad Kashmir, we again see the percentages like that boys have more access to education as compared to girls. Uh, Lahore University of Management and Sciences, LUMS, is one of the university which is being internationally recognized, and this is uh, among the very few universities which are being internationally recognized. And the Education Associate Dean of LUMS, Dr. Mariam Chughtai, says that when it comes to literacy, Pakistan is at the levels of sub-Saharan African countries. I just wanted to talk something about the health issues which are being faced by the women, but very briefly, because they are also related to their inaccessibility to education. As reported in the nation, 48.1% of the female population of the country lacks participation in decision regarding to their health care. The healthcare facilities at the government levels are very minimum, and at private level they are very expensive. So if somebody falls sick, if he's if he can afford, only then he can get treatment, and if he's not affording, then he have to wait for long queues to get the government treatment. The dogmatic and extremely narrow approach to women's rights and indifference towards women's health is the main reason why women are not able to get the proper medical attention. Women are at times not even allowed by other women to undergo medical treatment or visit a doctor. So, what you can say about when there is only a male doctor available? The tribal and rural concept of home deliveries is another reason why patients remain undiagnosed of medical complications and later on suffer for the remainder of their life. This is very common, and those who come to the lady health workers who come to the home for the deliveries and things like that, mostly they are not much trained. They don't have any formal education, but they just have practice. They have learned from their seniors, and they are working in the community. Patriarchal value system and gender biases affect women's choices and health, and consequently their work, economic productivity, and sense of well-being. And there is one thing which is very high, that is work family conflict. Even if the females who are working, they are not generally being supported by their families, and they end up their careers because they don't want to spoil their family lives, so they have to choose one thing, and say they generally stick towards their home. So very few percentage of women are successfully working and contributing towards the country economy. Here I would like to talk about the real barriers which are being faced by girls to get education in Pakistan. You can see at the slogan, shall I feed my daughter or educate her? So it's a real time question. So one thing is that we have a lack of a proper system. The Pakistan government has not established an education system which is adequate to meet the need of country's children, especially girls. Like there are not established public sector school system, whereas very few can go for the private, as I earlier told you. And there is another thing that is called madrasa system, where education is religious education has been imparted to children. So many people who do not afford to get formal education, they half of them send their children for that religious education to madrasas, right? Pakistan spent far less on education than it is recommended by United Nations Education, Scientific and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, in its guidance on education. And each year when budget is being presented, as it is being presented this month, we find that education has a huge cut on budget cut in higher education and in general education, and whereas the more emphasis is on the military budget and defense budget and things like that. So of course there is absence of quality education. Challenges to girls education are not only present in rural areas of Pakistan, whereas in metropolitan cities such as Lahore, where I am living, which is one of a very second largest city of Pakistan, we are also suffering challenges regarding girls' access to education. And we see that there is a huge number of girls who are out of school in Lahore districts, and the reason being is the absence of quality education. More recently, I have seen that the concept of homeschooling is again being, um, uh, came into limelight, and especially in this COVID-19 pandemic, many women who are educated, they are started doing homeschooling, because schools are closed, whereas the heavy fee is being charged from private schools, so the mothers are more inclined toward doing home education and homeschooling. Then, when we talk about the basic structure of a school, generally there is a lack of basic facilities being provided in a school structure. Like absence of boundary walls and absence of restrooms are the big barriers to girls' education, because the girls do not find themselves safe. And in rural areas of Pakistan, schools are very far away, and transport links are not only unavailable to rural areas, but in many of the large cities there are huge transportation problems. So it really create hurdle for girls to attend the school, and parents do not feel safe their daughters should go to school alone, or how they can contribute all of their time for a girl to send them to the school and then pick them up and things like that. In rural areas, in particular, harassment and rape rates are increasing day by day. You must have heard that in South Asia, the harassment and rape rates are been increasing much more in number than earlier before. The people in charge need to improve the existing laws, and it proceed with the implementation of anti-harassment laws, because the reason for increasing these crime rates are because you see that whenever any victims are generally, they do not report about their incidents. If they report about the incidents, they do not get protection. The protection is being provided, some cases get a lot of hype, like the Zanib case is being came into light, and the perpetrator was he was being caught by the police. But the law is not being enforced in a way that the punishment could be given immediately and instantly. It takes a lot of time, and there are so many hurdles in getting to justice, that people do not feel themselves uh, people do not feel themselves awkward, and they keep doing these harassments and things, sexual assaults and abuse and things like that. So it will come to an end until and unless there should be a strong law enforcement. Otherwise, this will keep going on. Then many schools only have primary school education. They just give education till primary level, and then after that, the higher school or the middle school is at a very long distance. So this is one of a major reason, as you have seen the graph, that many people and many girls left education after the primary, because they are not able enough to go to the school which is far away. And they basically, in one of a province of Pakistan, KPK, most of the girls ended up education receiving only till primary level. So this is just like a norm to them, that the girls should be educated up till primary. One of a very other important reason is prioritizing son's education compared to the daughter education. If a family has to choose between the education for a son or a daughter because of the financial constraint, typically the son will be chosen, because they think that he is the one who is going to earn for us in future, and he is going to he's going to be the bread earner for the for the family, so he should be given priority. So these negative parental attitudes towards educating daughters can also be the barrier to girls education, because generally it is a concept that why we should give so much attention to girls education, because after all they will get married and they will cook food at home, right? So KPK had the higher rates of education, but similarly huge gender disparity. And then you see one of the barrier in all provinces is a lack of willingness of the parents, because they find education expensive. They do not find that education will provide them any opportunity to get jobs, because there is a huge problem that many and many people are jobless in Pakistan. They do not find themselves able enough to do any business after getting education, because they find that it would be very costly for them to invest something into business, for girls especially. So even if a girl is willing to get education, the lack of positive attitude from parents along with the negative pressures from the community prevent on. uh, Community did not support female education, rather they will support that the girl should be given a huge dowry, a lot of gifts at the time of their wedding, because that will secure their marital life and their financial status as compared to the education. Because very few people think that an educated girl can, set up a better life, can do better in their life, but they just think that a huge dowry would be enough for the marital security. Um, there is another issue that basically in most of the families, the girl education is not being accepted if the girl is going to be into a co-education school. So you may be very surprised to hear about the women university, the concept of women university, where only the girls are being given education. The concept came into being about 25 years ago, when it was being observed that there are many females who got very good scores at undergrad level, yet they do not get admissions into universities, because there were colleges who were providing education to women, the only the female colleges, but there were no such universities. So the government uh, transformed those colleges into university, and then it has been noticed that there was a huge increase uh, in women education, that girls are taking admission at university level, and because their parents allow them to go to the only women university, but they do not allow them to go for co-education. Of course, for many parents, the most fundamental barrier to send their children to school is poverty. Even relatively low associate cost can put education out of reach for poor families, and there are many poor families in Pakistan. Let me tell you that at primary level, the government of Pakistan at Sindh and at Punjab, they give that incentive to the public that if they send their daughters and if they send their children to school, the government is provide them with a very minimum amount of scholarship. But even that does not work, because and the free of cost books and the uniforms and things like that, it did not work out well, because they sent their children for child labor. Their children work into the land, and they work at their home, and they take care of the younger kids, because there are lots of kids in the family, there are a lot of children in the family, so the elder one have to look after the younger one, whereas the mother is working into the fields. So things like that did not, even turned up into a good reason that these policies would help the people to go for education. So due to the poverty, many children are lacking basic facilities like food and water, and because they earn for them, so the families do not even consider the education of their children. Again, there is another reason for the high dropout, that in some provinces like KPK, there has been aggravated conflicts, natural disasters, and many IDPs are there. So this also contribute a lot in high dropout, because many people were displaced from their houses in result of the earthquake which came into 2005, and in many areas many people were died, they were homeless, and they were being displaced. So till now, even 15 years have passed, their families have not get proper houses and things like that, so the education status of children is quite questionable. Then, as I already mentioned, that inaccessibilities to college, that schools and colleges are far away. This is another important reason. Another reason is the early child marriages. Under Pakhtun customs, which is one of very traditional custom of Pakistan, couples are often wed at a very young age, and in certain districts, the parents do the arranged marriages of their daughters when they are still in schools. So those early age marriages, of course, are contributing a hindrance in girls' education. Then, as you may be aware of a fact that there was a very strong armed conflict and target areas of school in some areas of Pakistan, and basically they are the group of extremists who start, blasting up the schools, all kind of schools, the primary schools and high schools, because they do not want the people to get education. So they were the religious extremist kind of the people who basically did a lot of violence, and they just totally ruined the infrastructure of education in some areas of Pakistan, mostly in tribal areas of Sindh and Balochistan, and then in few areas of Punjab as well. So and there was one of a very famous incident. It's very very unfortunate to share that in December 2014 there was an attack on a school, that was an army public school, where militants killed 145 people. Almost all of them were children. This is one of the saddest incident in the history of Pakistan, that the children at the school were killed, and it has a very very negative impact, and it really made almost psychologically shattered the whole nation. And for a couple of months, even I am a psychologist, and I can understand my anxieties and fears, and I can deal with them, but I find myself unable to send my son to school, because I can relate him with the age of that those boys, and I was afraid of sending my daughter to school, because I have the pictures of those children in front of my eyes, and for many many weeks I was not able to sleep properly, because I was just thinking that the mother sent them to school and they never come back. So 16
Mhm.
December is the day which is being considered as a very sad day, and the whole Pakistan mourns on that day because of that army public school attack in Peshawar. Then one third of these attacks specifically target girls and women, aiming to interpret their studies. As I already mentioned, that in tribal areas there is a lot of cultural violence going on, and many many schools were blown up by militants, as I told you, and basically it has given a strong damage to the whole region in terms of their educational structure. Another reason that I would like to shed light on that many people do not send their daughters to school, because they find that there are the lack of female teachers. Now imagine the irony of the situation, that if you do not get your daughter educated, how you will get a female teacher in the school? Fine, but the parents hesitate to send their daughters for co-education, and this problem is not only common in tribal areas, but it's common in many many big cities too. But in tribal areas, the parda system, the covering the whole body, is the hijab and things like that are the reasons which prohibit girls to get good education. Then there are some political barriers as well. There are many many feudal lords and landlords and people who feel that if the people who are working for them will get good education, they will be not they will not be serving them anymore, they will not be useful for them. So in that case, they also do not facilitate their tribal areas and their rural areas, to facilitate them for having good infrastructure for education. Many local and semi-government NGOs work for women education in rural areas of all the provinces of Pakistan, but lack of proper supervision, you know, they are not doing that much work which they should do. And by the way, the concept of NGOs is not being much accepted in Pakistani culture. Here, most of the people think that the NGOs who are working, They have their own kind of agendas, and maybe they are just working not to help them but to fulfill their own, objectives. So they do not welcome much initiatives by taken which are being taken by them. So overall, it's the lack of awareness when it's come to the importance of education, and you know, it's either their father and after marriage their husbands. The male are the one who are going to take decisions for the females. Now, I was somewhere asked that I should talk about briefly related to the stigmas which are related to going to psychologist or to a psychiatrist. That is not basically related directly to the status of women education in Pakistan, but I thought that I should talk briefly about that. That what is the situation of access to mental health, situation in Pakistan. The first thing which is you know a barrier, or which does not allow or does not feel give the feeling of comfort for them to go to the for so seeking mental health, is fear of being labeled. So they think that people will laugh at them, they will call them psycho, they will say they are abnormal people, and they mark them crazy. And even still there is a concept that some evil power has possessed them, and they go to different peers who just do their own kind of work on them. Basically, they don't have any formal education, but they still claim that they can treat all kind of mental illnesses, and they you can find them on the corner of each street. And these kind of the fears and afraid of being bullied and being mentally low, it does not allow them to go for seeking help. And another thing is the social pressure, the disgrace in society, that what will people say, and they will be defamed and things like that. I don't know how much they are common in Western world in this 20th century, but it's still very much there in Pakistan, that for all kind of the mental illnesses, the cause is always been attributed towards that person is being possessed, and some supernatural cause could be attributed, and the spiritual healers are being engaged in treatment of those individuals. So this was quite a lot about talking about some dark side of situation which is being presented to you, and it's a real time experience which I have seen, that how women face a lot of problems in access to education. But still there are few resilient women in Pakistani society who work for the betterment of other females who get chance to do something good, and then they keep doing good things for others. So Mehwi Shayat is one of the leading actors of Pakistan film industry, and she is selected as the Ministry of Human Rights Goodwill Ambassador. So basically, organized by the Ministry of Human Rights, she there was an event which is being celebrated on International Day of Girl Child in collaboration with European Union. So they did an innovative use an innovative idea, that they did some kind of indigenous art on trucks. The trucks were being painted, and there were the messages written on them about the rights of a girl child, and they were being placed at different famous places of Islamabad. And uh, let me show you the pictures of those trucks. So these are the few pictures of those trucks. Of course, the writing is, whatever is being written is in Urdu language. You may not be able to read that, but I will help you out. The one says that the education is light, and then let me live, let me study, let me play. And early age child marriage is cruel. And then let me study, let me win the race. So these are the paintings and the trucks and the girls which are being portrayed, and the positive messages are being given. So basically, of course, education empowers women, and it gives them more financial independence. It gives them more awareness to deal better with society and the world. But what we need to do is to change the mindset of the people, because the people do not realize the severity of the situation, and they still think that education is not that important. Rather, getting marriage at appropriate age is maybe more important, and we should not spend more on their education, but probably on the dowry. uh, Here I would like to give you hope for future. Like there are still some women of Pakistan, like Muniba Mazari. I'm sure many of you may be aware of that. That she's after an accident, she is physically handicapped, but yet she managed to do a lot of social work. And it's being given lot of importance by international media as well. And Malala Yousafzai, I'm sure you would be aware of Malala Yousafzai and her struggle for the education of the women. She was from KPK, and she was being she got the bullet because she was writing silently for the rights of the women, and some militants were after her. So she finally left Pakistan for her security, but she's still working for the rights of the women in Pakistan and across the world. Then the Captain Mariam Shahid. So these are the kind of the women, and Benazir Bhutto, who achieved their milestones even after all the hardships and obstacles. So these women are inspiration for young women to step forward and stand out of all the hurdles. So this is all about I shared with you in today's class, and I don't know how much useful it would be for you, but it can give you an overall picture about the kind of the issues someone could be facing in another part of the world. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. My,
Thank you.
comprehensive. Um, would you? I'd like to open up the floor for questions. Oh, you see the little icons there? You're getting icon applauses from the students. I don't know if you can see that. You
Um,
know, from Alexandra. Yes, well, let me show you what they're doing. I'll show you.
okay, so I
Ah,
have seen
there
that
we go.
Jessica has raised a hand.
Yeah.
Right. Hi, Jessica.
I was just clapping. That was a good
Oh,
presentation. Thank you for sharing all that.
you're
Yeah.
welcome. I thought you want to ask something.
Yeah. Please, let's open the floor for questions.
Well, I do have one. Where did you learn your English? It's wonderful. You're really
Oh my God, it's a huge compliment coming from you, Florence, but I don't find my English so good because I was born and raised in Saudi Arabia, where my primary education was not in English. I was being educated in a school where the medium of instruction was not English. I started getting English, I started reading English at the age, at grade 6 basically, right? And the formal English, which I in which education I started getting at university level. So I started getting education in English at a very late age. But I think it's because of you people, to which I get a lot of chance to interact at ICP forums and things like that. And I keep doing work, and I keep struggling to learn better, but still I find that I have so many much to learn more. But I hope with all my ambiguities, I would be able enough to convey my message to you all.
well, it's
Oh, you
really great.
absolutely did. Yeah.
I would hate to have to give a talk in Urdu or whatever language is the most common in Pakistan. So I'm very impressed.
Oh, thank you so much, dear Florence.
Other questions?
I have a question actually. First of all, this presentation was very eye-opening. I didn't realize the challenges that people and especially women in Pakistan face, and I feel that I definitely take my education or even the opportunity to have it, or how are women like becoming educated? Like, what is being done to help them?
I'm sorry, I find
get an education.
my internet connection is getting unstable, so I just missed few of your words. So could you repeat your question?
Just how are, like, what is being done to help women get an education and help them achieve,
Well, basically,
that.
it's a big question which you have asked. But at many forums, things are being done, and there are different kind of opportunities which are being created by for the women by different organization. Maybe at times at government level, at times by different organization and companies. Like for instance, there are different scholarships which are being given by maybe you can say some food company, like, or maybe some shoe company. So they just give incentive to women education, and by using those scholarships, many of the females get this opportunity to get education. And then there are certain NGOs which are being established on Islamic principle. For instance, they give the loan to the people, but they do not ask for interest. So this is another way that female get education by using those scholarships. By the way, the government of Pakistan also provides certain scholarships, and like in my class, in my MS class, I have 28 girls. Out of 28, 22 are being given scholarship by UNICEF, right?
Mhm.
So then we have the scholarships given by the Red Crescent Society. So there are a lot of such opportunities, but one have to be very vigilant enough. Like the L'Oreal company gives many scholarships to the women who are getting education in Pakistan and India. So you one have to be very vigilant enough to seek for those scholarships, and to get in touch with the university or college scholarship office to have proper information. Only then they can they are very very competitive as well. Only then they can get that. But if you don't have that kind of resilience, the kind of quest for knowledge, you are not going to explore them.
Well, I'd like to
My
ask a
PhD,
question
let me
shifting
share
gears
with
a
you
bit.
that my PhD was also on Higher Education Commission scholarship. I get my PhD
Ah,
degree on a competitive scholarship by Higher Education Commission.
so it's at the government level,
It's at the
um,
government level, because
where you and
I
other,
got married
yeah,
after my
okay.
masters, and I really don't have much funds to pay for my doctoral degree. And there was the first time back
Mhm.
in year 2004 when government launched those Higher Education Commission scholarships, and I really have no idea that how to appear for that test and what's going to be the process, but I just went for that. And there was a huge number of students, amount around 55,000 people applied for that, and there were only very few
Wow.
scholarships. And luckily I got the one, I cleared the test, and destiny is determined and I get the opportunity to get education through that scholarship. Otherwise it would be very hard for me probably to spend this much amount on my education after my marriage.
Amazing. I'd like to shift gears a little bit, if it's all right with you, to talk about the healthcare needs for women. It sounds problematic for sure with getting education, but as you know, we're dealing with a pandemic that's worldwide, and I was wondering what's been the experience for women with the pandemic in Pakistan, if you could talk a little bit about that.
Are you talking about exclusively in terms of health, or are you just talking about in general?
Well, you and I were able to talk a little bit before the class began
Yeah, yeah,
about
yeah,
some of the research that you're doing. And
yeah.
so yeah,
Yes,
in
so
general with their health.
I just told you that I'm doing one of a research which is looking at the reproductive health care which is being provided to the women who deliver during this COVID pandemic. So
Mhm.
it was about the end of the January, since it is being exposed in Pakistan, and we're coming to boom in mid of the March. Until now the cases are being increasing day by day, whereas in rest of the world it's comparatively decreasing, but here because it came late, so it's going towards its peak right now. So
Okay.
yeah, so we are having lot and lot of cases each day, and during this situation where you find that the access to healthcare is already very difficult. So in this situation we find that the mothers who are pregnant and who are going to deliver during this situation were very much unsure about the kind of health and hygiene they will be receiving in hospitals, right? Because the hospitals
Mhm.
initially were not being provided with all kind of medical kits to the doctors and things like that, and SOPs were not developed. So there were many doctors, female doctors and gynecologists, who died because they did the surgery or C-section of a patient who was COVID positive. So it was the both way.
Oh.
Even those who were providing the help were not safe, and even those who were going for help were not safe. So the situation was quite ambiguous, and it was unclear. So we conducted a research on that, and we find that most of the females we are basically in phase of data analysis, but the kind of the initial trends we are looking into, we get to know that the care and the care is not satisfactory. The female do not find it appropriate with whatever is being given to them, and those who are being exposed to different issues by lady health workers, they were literally crying. They say that there was no proper SOPs being followed, and we were not comfortable enough, but yet we have to deliver because we were in a middle of a situation where we have to get out of it. So it was something very very scary to know that even if a new life is coming into this world, and the situation is so bleak, and things like that.
Mm. Thank you. So you're still on the upswing.
Yeah, I think the connection is bit unstable. Can you all hear me? I think there is a problem with internet connection. I don't know what happened. ओहो, जूम ही कट गया. हम्म. हाँ, नो इंटरनेट कनेक्शन आ रहा है मेरी तरफ से यार. टीपी लिंक, नो इंटर, स्टॉर्म फाइबर कनेक्ट कर लूँ. अब आ गया, टीपी लिंक भी आ गया. वो बंद हो गया था ना एकदम से. नो इंटरनेट आ रहा है, कनेक्टेड हो गया. अब चलो. हाय अल्लाह, क्यों कट गया? नहीं नहीं, मैं खुद ही कर लूँगी. Hello.
Also, I think you might see more of that kind of thought about when school should begin or when school should end. When you go more into rural areas of our country. And why that is, it may, Dr. Muzam, you're back?
Yeah, I'm sorry, my internet connection was having some problems, so I got disconnected.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. There was a question for you. Why don't you restate the question and we'll give Dr. Muzam a chance to answer?
So I noticed in your presentation that one of the polls stated that a lot of children were saying that they're not having education because they're too young or too old. And I was really curious about that because it doesn't seem like it's something that presents itself as much in the United States. So it's not exactly a fully formulated question, but it was
Yeah, as I told you,
something I was curious about.
okay, so basically, as I told you, that there are multiple kind of education system available in Pakistan. So, for instance, in private school system, the student can get enrolled into school in kindergarten at the age of 2.5 years, right? But in a government school, no child can go to school because the kindergartens are not available in government schools. They started from class 1, and at very few schools in class in from nursery class, right? So they do not take the kid before the age of 4 years. So at different situations and at different places where the parents find that they are basically having a school which do not take their children at the age which they want to send, they consider them too young, and at times the
You
parents
too.
don't want to send their children to the school, and they are over age to get admission at an early class. So it's
Well, we're at
both
8
ways,
o'clock
right?
tonight.
Is there a
Thank you.
class difference as well? I mean, the different school systems for when children begin and when they end. It seems like it may be private sector and public sector. Is it also related to income and class as well as attitude?
Yeah, definitely. It's related to income as well, class as well, and it also, make a difference that when a children is going for O levels and A levels, it's a different kind of education setup. And when they go for their metric and intermediate, it's a different kind of education system. And for O levels, the student have to complete 3 years in O levels, right? Whereas the comparable system, which is metric, the student will get through in 2 years. But whereas the quality of education would be very poor and very low in metric, right? So there are such
Mhm.
kind of differences as well.
Yeah. Any other questions for Dr. Mazan?
Yeah, I also have a question.
Yeah,
Go
sure.
ahead. Who's asking?
Julia,
Julia. I don't see.
over
You must
here.
be on the other page. Okay. Oh,
You
okay.
had mentioned about the attacks that happened in 2014 at the schools, and I was wondering if there were different safety precautions or anything that was added as a result of those in order to help parents like yourself and also just the students in general feel more safe when going to school.
Yes, Julia, you have asked a very pertinent question. There was no concept of school children's safety before 2014. Like there were no security guards, there were no such measures where the safety walk-through gates were being placed at the front of the schools. There were no razor wires being placed at the school boundaries and things like that. But after that incident, it has been mandatory for all public and private schools to follow those SOPs to provide safety and security to children. And then that security and safety, it increases with the kind of the education system you are going into. If you are going for private sector, of course they are following more and more SOPs, and they are more cautious about the safety of your children. However, in public schools, yes, there was a system which they followed, and because of those, after that they caught many militants who were roaming around schools, but they were not able to do any attack because they were being caught due to this kind of surveillance being given by the government. So there was this kind of mechanism being engaged after that. And even in my university, we used to go to university, just the gates were be open all the time, we just go in and go out. But now the system is altogether changed. We have to have the security card with us. We have the the car tag, car sticker is with us. And then even if we go 10 times in and out, the car will be checked by the security guard with the everything, because no outside person would be allowed to go in university until and unless the name is written on the gate with the security chief security officer. So these kind of precautions are being taken at a very high level.
You know, I'm reminded that in the United States, with all of the school shootings, security was increased at all levels, and there's still, unfortunately, a major discussion as to the kinds of precautions that should be taken. Should teachers be armed? Should you have the police take over? And in fact, in some instances, minor skirmishes or incidents between or among students or between students and teachers in middle school or even high school became police matters with the kind of police brutality that was used to stop what really was in the past more of a skirmish or an outbreak in school that could be handled by school personnel. So we are still having these discussions. I also remember when I first came to PACE, who needed an ID? After a while, faculty as well as students were well recognized by whoever happened to be there. And slowly, the system has become more sophisticated, which, in my opinion, gives us the illusion of safety, but not real safety. And so I think your question is very well taken, and we'll see how it continues to evolve here and elsewhere in the world where violence is a way
Yeah.
to make a point. It's unfortunate.
Very much right. This kind of discussion has been generated here as well, where initially it was said that every gazetted officer and every teacher can have an gun, can keep a gun with them. But since we are in a country who have a history of uh, kind of what I what I can say that there is a history of being extremism and things like that. So it is not being recommended that this kind of permission should be given to the large number of people, because you don't know that who is going to do what. So that's why that did not turn into a term of a law, which is very good, because I don't think that keeping arm with everyone, the gun with everyone, is a safe solution to stop violence, because I as a psychologist believe it will basically not stop it, but it will more it will increase it more, right?
Does anyone else have a question or a comment?
I'm